Hi everybody, and welcome to today's ISE webinar. My name is Steve Isherwood. I'm Joint Chief Executive of the ISE. I'm going to be acting as host and compere for the webinar. Today we're going to be talking about careers and employer engagement in schools. We've got a really exciting expert panel lined up for us all to hear from. We want to make this as interactive as possible, so please do pop any thoughts, comments into the chat, and then also if you've got any questions, please use the Q&A function there. We've got roughly 10 minutes, quarter of an hour at the end of the session, depending how it goes, to field your questions, and our panel are more than happy to answer anything that you may want to know. If you haven't been on one of the ISE webinars before, we do record these sessions, so you will get a link over the next couple of days to the recording for anything that you've missed, or if you want to share it with colleagues or revisit it. I haven't said this to Tristram yet, but always in the past we've shared slides, haven't we, Tristram? So I'm sure you're happy to do the same. Just to give you a broad idea of the agenda, we've got about 10 minutes. We're going to hear from Tristram, who's going to be talking about sort of the overall careers landscape, particularly what's happening with policy, etc. Then we're going to go into a more Q&A session where I'm really pleased to be joined by Raki, Steph and Donna, and they'll all introduce themselves in a moment. Then after that, as I said, we've got time for questions at the end. So before we get started, why don't we do some introductions just to let you know who everybody is. We'll go around how people appear in my screen. So let's start at the top right. Raki, would you like to go first? Introduce yourself.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm Raki Taylor. I work at BGC Group, and my role is Global Head of Talent Acquisition and Development.
Great. And BCG Group, just so people know who you are, what you do. I know, obviously, because we've spoken quite a few times, but some of the audience may not.
Cool. So BGC Group, we're an interdealer brokerage. We have a very large portfolio. We also have a number of brands. Another brand of ours is Cantor Fitzgerald, which is our boutique investment bank. We also have our fintech arm under the umbrella of Phoenix, and we do also have a very large real estate presence in the Americas under Newmark too as well. So we are a multifaceted organisation, from interdealer brokerage, boutique investment bank, to fintech, to real estate too as well.
Right, very broad portfolio. Thanks, Raki. That's great. Steph, would you like to introduce yourself and who Direct Line are for those people that may not know?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So I'm Steph. I'm the Emerging Careers Lead at Direct Line Group. Assume most of you might have heard of Direct Line Group. We're an insurance company, but what you may not know is that we own other brands such as Churchill, Green Flag. We have auto services, so we repair a lot of cars for our customers. So we have a auto services network, so branches, about 27 different branches of garages across the UK, and we also have legal services to support our customers who are going through complex claims.
Fantastic, thanks, Steph. Donna, would you like to say? I should say a vested interest in what's the word? Vested interest. Oh, I'm mangling my words already. Donna and I know each other because I'm the enterprise advisor for Donna's school. So Donna's doing great work. So I'm pleased that Donna's joining us. Anyway, Donna, would you like to introduce yourself and just explain what you do?
Yes, hello, I'm Donna Mason. I'm the Careers Advisor and Careers Leader at Roding Valley High School, which is a secondary state school in Loughton in Essex. We have approximately 1,400 students ranging from year 7 to year 13, and I design the careers programme for the whole school, and I provide advice and guidance for years 7 to 13 parents and students.
Fantastic. Thanks, Donna. And we'll be hearing from all our panelists shortly. So last but by no means least, I'm going to hand over to Tristram now. He's going to introduce himself first of all, and then just talk us through the current careers landscape. Tristram, over to you.
Hi there. Some people will know me as I'm formerly of this parish, but I'm now based at the University of Derby, where I'm Professor of Career Education, which means that I spend quite a lot of time looking at and thinking about the way in which careers is organised in schools and universities as well. But I'm going to focus on the schools today. So I'm going to just share a presentation and try and set up sort of a bit of an overview of how I see the system and what some of the things that are going on at the moment, because it's been quite political recently. So that's kind of interesting. So I think we could divide up the main bits that you need to know about in how careers works in schools into these 4 categories. So we've got the Gatsby benchmarks, which I'll talk about a bit more, but they sort of set out a framework for what schools should do. We've got the CDI framework, which is a set of learning outcomes. We're not going to talk about that in great detail, but essentially it sets out what we're trying to aim for, what we want students to know at the end of schooling about careers, and the labour market, and so on. Then got the careers profession, which is who does it. So that's the careers advisors, who people will be probably very familiar with, but also careers leaders. And in very busy people like Donna's case, those people are sometimes the same person, but these are two jobs. So careers advisors will often be seeing students one-to-one. They might be involved in other things like some careers lessons, helping with labour market information and so on. But a careers leader is the person who's responsible for the overall structure of the careers program within the school. And they won't necessarily be seeing students one-to-one. They're kind of got more of a strategic role. And then outside of the schools, we've got kind of a set of things which are there really to support the school. So the Careers and Enterprise Company, the Careers Hubs, these are government-funded organisations which are designed to support schools to deliver good career guidance. So what do we mean by good career guidance? Well, that's a kind of big question, but there's a sort of fairly well-defined definition, which is the Gatsby benchmarks, and it says there are 8 things that schools should be doing. So they should have a stable program. They should be delivering good labour market information. So, information about what careers are out there and how you get into them and so on. They should be keeping good records and focusing on addressing the needs of each student. They should be linking the curriculum to careers. They should be organising encounters with employers and employees. Experiences of workplaces, so that's work experience, but it's a bit broader than that, so it might include visits and stuff. And then essentially the same sort of stuff with further and higher education. So trying to bring young people into encounters with apprenticeships, T-levels, and then higher education and so on. And then finally, we want some personal guidance, which is what we might call careers advice. So one-to-one career counselling, coaching, different names for it. But the one-to-one bit where young people really get some focus on themselves. What I've done here with the colour coding is, I think the ones that are in dark green are the ones where employers are absolutely central to it. I think if employers are listening to this and they think, what can I be doing to work with schools, then it's going into schools, helping, giving talks about your company, giving talks about your career and so on, but also hosting various experiences, the workplace. And then the light green ones are ones where I think employers have still got quite an important role, but perhaps not as important. So the provision of labour market information, perhaps contributing to the curriculum in key points. So if there's a particular curriculum subject that links to what your business is about, you might want to make a contribution there. Then also helping young people to understand what qualifications are going to lead them in the direction of the kind of careers that exist within your organisation. So that's things like talking about apprenticeships, talking about what degrees you typically recruit from. So all of those ones I think are important. The other ones I think less directly relevant from an employer point of view, but still important as part of the overall sort of structure of career guidance in schools. So we've got this idea of what's good. We've then got some quite good data from the Careers and Enterprise Company that tells us how well it's going and how well schools are doing against this. So, are they delivering it? Well, and this is based on self-reported data, which is one of the weaknesses of it, but it also means we've got quite a lot of data. So almost all schools have provided some kind of summary of how well they're doing. What we've seen is over the last, 10 years, effectively, we've seen the number of schools hitting the Gatsby benchmarks going up and up and up. And there's some new figures that are about to come out, which are going to say that it's gone up again, I'm pretty sure. It always does. There was a bit of a wobble in the pandemic, but basically we've seen a fairly steady progress. So schools are getting better and better at working with these Gatsby benchmarks that I just talked about and trying to actually deliver on. But as you can see, most schools, the average school, in fact, is not meeting all 8. And because of that, there's quite a number of schools that are doing considerably worse, so are meeting less than half, for example. So there's what you'll see if you get out and work in schools is quite a lot of variability. So there's been a lot of focus on this recently, and particularly there have been 2 quite political reports that I'm going to just quickly take you through the outcomes of. So the first was the Select Committee report, and it was the Education Select Committee, and a Select Committee is a group of MPs who look into an issue that they've decided is important and which it needs more scrutiny, and they look at it and they say, how's the government doing on it? And so and the government have a duty then to answer it and to respond. They don't have to do what the Select Committee suggests. The Select Committee is all party. It's not part of the government. It's outside of the government, but it's quite a powerful group within Parliament. And so the Select Committee looked at this area and they said there were a number of big problems. And I don't think it was, I think it was a very fair, some might even say a little bit too friendly a report on the state of play. But what they came out with was these things broadly. And I've got on my blog, there's a bit more of a detailed breakdown of what they said if people are interested in getting into the nuts and bolts of it. But they said we need a strategy, a national strategy on this. And we used to have one and it's kind of lapsed and the government have not done anything about it. So that they say we need one of those again. We need some more resources for schools. We need to actually move it lower down. We need to develop careers education in primary schools so that young people start thinking about these things before they get to secondary schools, by which point some of their ideas about what's possible in their lives start to get quite fixed. It needs to be better embedded into the curriculum. We need to improve the way that schools connect to employers, and a lot of that's about setting up better ways of bringing the two together. And then we need to support students with special educational needs and disabilities and disadvantaged students better. So it's quite a powerful report. The government inevitably responded to it by saying, we're doing all of this already, there's nothing to worry about, which is probably not true. But I think a lot of us were a little underwhelmed by the government's response to this. We then had the Ofsted thematic review. So people are probably familiar with Ofsted. It's the Quality Assurance Agency for Education. And it also does, as well as inspecting individual schools, it looks at whole areas. And so the government tasked it to look at careers education, career guidance. And it said the kind of main findings that it came out with was that schools need to ensure that staff are appropriately qualified. They need to be better at involving parents and families more. They need to be more positive about technical pathways. So that's things like apprenticeships and T-levels. DFE, Department for Education, needs to be better at improve the data that it holds and collects. It needs to make the role of the careers advisor more attractive. There's some recruitment challenges that lots of schools were talking about. And then the Careers and Enterprise Company needs to help schools and colleges work together with each other more effectively. Again, a pretty moderate sort of set of recommendations, but all of these two reports show is that while there's been some good improvements in this area over the last 10 years, there's still quite a lot to do. So I'm involved, and so is Stephen. We're involved in a group which is called the Career Development Policy Group, which is essentially a kind of lobbying group that works with government and other political parties as well on these issues. And we've got a sort of essentially a manifesto of what we think needs to happen. And it chimes with quite a lot of the things that you've just heard. Now, this is not just for schools, this is a bit broader. So the Career Guidance Guarantee says the government needs a strategy. That's the top first priority. It needs to figure out what its strategy is. It then needs to push on and make sure this, what we call the Gatsby revolution. So essentially all schools are meeting all Gatsby benchmarks. That's a minimum criteria that we want to see in schools. We also need to do much more for youth unemployment. Essentially, young people who are outside of the education system get very little career support at the moment, and that's a problem. And it hasn't always been the case. So that's an area that needs to be looked at. We want to see more focus on graduates' careers. We think graduate career services are pretty good, but there are some problems in terms of resourcing, who gets it, and also once people actually leave university, where's the best place for them to go. We then believe that there should be career development services for adults throughout life, and then the whole thing should be based on good quality assurance and professionalism, so that careers advisors should all be qualified, for example, to at least level 6. There should be good training available for careers leaders and so on. And so these are the 6 areas that this group is campaigning on. I think, again, they're not kind of hugely radical. We're talking to all the political parties. I think it's possible that these could be addressed under the political parties, and there's quite a lot of consideration that will be going on over the next year while we move up to the election. So I've just put some thoughts about what employers can do, particularly because that's one of the unique selling points of the ISE, really, is your connection to employers. And I think the first one is continue to work closely with schools and colleges, as I know many of you are doing. It's not always as easy as you would like, but it is possible, and I think it is hopefully slowly getting better and easier to do so. I think there is a desperate need for intermediaries and brokers. So rather than just individual firms working individually with schools, it would be nice if employers were able to come together and fund programs and schemes that brought employers and schools together. And Careers and Enterprise Company is one of the ways to work that. There are lots of other charities and things around that you could work with. So if you want to do sort of CSR type activity, I think there are lots of places to put your money that can really make a difference. And then finally, I think it's important that all stakeholders in this system come out and say, this is important, we need to do better. Yes, there's some good things in the system. I mean, broadly, I think the system as it stands is quite good, but it's under-resourced, it's got lots of problems, it's not been kind of developed as well as it could have been. And I think we need to keep saying that and actually be involved in some of the lobbying. And there's an important moment over the next year when all of that is going to matter, because we're moving towards an election, and that's when politicians become much better at listening, I've noticed. So this is me. So yeah, I'm Tristram, but I'm happy to pick up any questions later on, but I'll hand back to Stephen to move over to the panel.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tristram. Yes, I've got loads of questions, but I'll save them till a little bit later and give other people a chance to pop their questions in. And I'm sure there's various themes that we'll pick on as we go through. So next I'm going to come over to Raki and Steph, and we're going to talk about actually from an employer's perspective, what they're trying to achieve in schools and what those challenges are before I move on to Donna. So I've got a couple of questions to ask you both to sort of frame the conversation. So why don't we start off first of all with kind of the challenges you're facing in the schools market. Raki, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Stephen. I think with regards to challenges, I think one of the first hurdles we've often observed is that when we have spoken to many of the students, there is a common misconception and association around what career opportunities are available, particularly with financial services. And we're based in Canary Wharf. And often many of the students we sort of talk to often feel it's not obtainable for them. So there's a big piece around what's available and what they can obtain. The second, I would say as well, is, the engagement is key, and kind of lends back to what Tristan was sort of saying. Like, it's the engagement side of it is key, and it works both ways for both the employers offering opportunities. We deliver lots of in-person presentations. We're doing a lot of different programs, but it's also key that the schools are cascading and connecting the students to as well. And the support from head teachers, general teachers, career advisors, but even as Tristan's also related to, like even families and friends, like connecting the students plays a vital role, and plays a vital role for them to feel confident to actually approach that employer, to actually do that application, to actually come forward for that insight day, and not sort of stop themselves or add barriers because they have these perceptions that actually, I can't apply for this opportunity because this company has an associated brand, or it's an industry that they think they're not, that they can tap into, because they are always concerned with these misconceptions and the types of people that are working there. So when we are working with our sort of partnering schools, and we partner with Donna's School in Roding Valley too as well, we're always trying to ensure that our opportunities are open to all students, and not to keep the pool narrowed by subject. We do often find that some of our schools do narrow the subjects and in terms of accessibility for wider students. And our goal is at the moment is to try and actually engage with students at a much earlier stage of their education, from about year 9. And because that is a critical point in time where they are choosing their subjects, doing their GCSEs, And that's where you often see a lot of students self-selecting themselves out of STEM subjects and other careers then too as well. Oops, sorry, the lighting's sort of gone in where I am, so bear with me. The other thing too as well is, I think, just constantly engaging and educating not just schools, community, but also for us as employers. We have to constantly engage our managers and stakeholders too as well about the generational shifts, about the different working habits and expectations of the sort of the new labour market coming through. And as we all know, social media has had a huge impact on society, but more so it's encouraged students to think more entrepreneurial. So many of our students who are on our various different programs, many of them have what I call a side hustle. So as well as them studying, they're also, you know, they've got their own little sort of business or their own sort of entrepreneurship. And they're challenging the traditional career path and working habits. So for employers, like, it's definitely keeping us on our toes then too as well.
So, thanks, Raki. Oh, sorry, go on.
I hope that's given you a bit of insight.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Raki. I'll come back to you in a couple of seconds after I've spoken to Steph and just talk a bit more about how you actually go about managing that activity. So, Steph, you manage your school's approach a little bit differently, don't you? So, but what are those overall challenges that you're finding in the schools market?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for employers engaging with schools is how you reach all of the schools. If you're recruiting nationally like we do, how do you reach all of the schools and get your message across in an efficient way? So I think most people in similar roles to me struggle with resource availability and budget. So we need to be thinking about how we can create the best return on investment for the effort that we put in. So historically, we have gone into schools in previous organisations that I've worked in and go and present to students. And you may, pique the interest of one or two students in the room. One may go on and apply if you're lucky, but it's really difficult to reach the students and find those people that would be interested in applying to you as an organisation in a really efficient way. So yeah, we kind of switched it around so that people are coming to us rather than us going to them, because they will be more invested and interested in what we've got to say. So I think that's our biggest challenge. And I mean, the role of a careers advisor in the school is hugely challenging, because I think as an employer, ideally what we would want is some kind of system where we're all kind of uploading our information that is then shared out into the different schools across the UK, either by sector or by skill, so that actually, yes, we can come in and speak to the students, but perhaps we do that virtually, so it is more efficient, because it does take a huge amount of time preparing what you're going to say and then taking a day out to go into a school when everyone's really busy and struggling from resource constraints. I think that's the biggest one, challenge for us, and that's why we've kind of flipped it around, and I'll talk a bit more about what we're doing in a moment. Sorry, Stephen, you're on mute.
I really should know better by now, shouldn't I, after all these webinars? I was just going to say, Steph, why don't we cover that now, then I'll go back to Raki, because you both approach it quite differently. How do you kind of go about actually managing that school's engagement?
Yeah, okay. So as an organisation, so my role is that I manage all of our apprenticeship. So last year we moved away from traditional graduate programmes to our more inclusive Ignite programmes that are open to anybody regardless of their background. They just have to have their motivation and the aptitude to develop the skills that we need. But I also manage our community fund, which falls under our sustainability agenda, but we are closely aligning and joining that up to the Ignite programs to create talent pools to feed into that. And so what we are doing, instead of going into schools, which we do on occasion, do go into schools, but we are partnering with an organisation called Young Professionals, who have connections into most schools around the UK. And they are finding people from underrepresented backgrounds that have been left behind, who need that helping hand into employment, into a better future. So they find the individuals for us and share our opportunities to come and engage with our community fund activities. And over the last 12 months or so, we've supported thousands of people, so 3,000 to 4,000 individuals, by inviting them to participate in some of our activities. Those types of activities are, we run a 2-day introduction into insurance to let them know what insurance is all about, the types of opportunities that we have to offer them, the types of skills you'll need. That's on site in our offices. We offer mentoring, so we have a different mentoring schemes that we run throughout the year. We offer work experience, in-person work experience, and also virtual work experience. So we're able to reach much broader a more diverse set of students across the UK and at a high volume. And then we want to then connect them up to our opportunities. So we've only been running this since May last year. So now we're looking at how do we then connect those individuals who have piqued their interest in insurance, want to work for us, and how do we connect and support them into the jobs that we've got at Direct Line Group. So it's coaching them, supporting them, so that when they go through the recruitment process, they stand the best chance. And then that doesn't end there. So we over the last 18 months or so, we've evolved what we've been doing. So prior, when we first started, people had to tick this social mobility boxes like free school meals and such like. But now what we found is that we were meeting people that had already gone through similar experiences with other employers, and what we wanted to do was find those people that were most in need and faced most complex barriers to employment. So we've started working with some charities and some SEND schools as well. But what we're thinking is actually now, when we're trying to connect them up to opportunities, we need to put in some additional layer of support, wraparound support, so that the support doesn't end when they join us. It continues in to make sure that they successfully transition into Direct Line Group.
Great, thanks, Steph. Very comprehensive. So, Raki, coming back to yourself, because you take quite a different approach to actually how you manage and what you do on schools. That was part of my thinking of having you both on this call, actually, because there's not necessarily one way to one size that fits all. So, how do you approach it, Raki?
So I think, first of all, like, our size of business is so variably different from Direct Line. BGC Group, yes, we are a global organisation, but our global footprint is probably just shy of 12,000. Our UK footprint is probably about 2,500. So our actual reach is it's a much smaller footprint compared to somewhere like Direct Line. So what we had done is, so around about the end of sort of 2019, and just give it more context, I joined the firm in 2018, and sort of like was building out the whole sort of strategy from talent acquisition, talent development, everything from early careers right the way through to like senior hiring. So in 2019, we sort of delivered 2 sort of traditional types of graduate programs. And we just decided, and I sort of decided, actually, we just need to take stock here around, okay, what's working and what's not too as well. And so we decided like a whole sort of change around our early careers strategy, and actually sort of focus on building out our relationships more broadly with like local schools across South East London and North London, and just broaden that talent pool too as well. So with Interdealer Brokerage as well, many of our existing employees, particularly in Interdealer Brokerage, haven't necessarily done that traditional sort of career path of going all the way to higher education, university, and then becoming a broker. Many have sort of come through a variety of different paths, often finishing school, some of them at 16, some of them at 18. And so from our sort of diversity perspective, we've actually got lots of different types of individuals who are at our firm with different educational journeys. And so we wanted to kind of go back to that and sort of broaden that out. So it took us some considerable amount of time navigating and connecting and establishing relationships with our local schools. But from engaging with various head teachers, careers advisors, recommendations, and specialist teachers, that's how we've managed to build our sort of early career program. And Donna's a great example of that. There was someone who knew Donna in our firm, connected us, and we'd been in conversation with Donna probably done about 2018, 2019, and then sort of got that underway and got it established with the programs that we have. And we've got a great working relationship with Donna in her school too as well. So through those channels and being proactively engaged with the students, we have delivered a number of in-person presentations. We've done skills-based presentations. We've offered insight days. Again, even broadening out to wider charities, for example, like Sutton Trust, Young Women in Finance, 10,000 Black Interns. We've done a real sort of variety of different sort of initiatives and groups. And offering them a 10-day work experience opportunity, and offering them sort of like the School Leaver program. And furthermore, with our established partnering schools, when we do have opportunities in our early career space, that might require a school leaver, we will blast those communications out with our early careers sort of partnering schools, and people like Donna will then cascade that across then to their sort of student population. So it has taken us time. We've been on a journey, since 2021, we've delivered our third sort of 10-day work experience. And that in itself, we've really tried to replicate of them applying, having a soft interview, giving them feedback, even those students who aren't successful. We've also piloted our first School Leaver program, and that has been very successful. It's a 12-month opportunity. And again, it's allowing students who may wish to defer their university placement or just have the opportunity to start their career too as well, because education isn't the backdrop for them. And then they'll get a 12-month rotation across our shared services as well as our revenue area. They're supported with their sort of qualifications. They have mentors. They have a variety of people from my team who'll guide them through doing check-ins like every 6 weeks too as well. So again, ensuring that they are being scaffolded to be successful too as well. And again, we've just launched our second School Leaver program. But over time, what we have also observed is it takes a community to build a sort of an early careers sort of opportunity and to access the students. And most importantly, what we're noticing is that some of the students we've partnered with, they're actually now sort of passing, information about our organisation and opportunities to their network and friends and family too as well. So our approach has been quite different, but I think for us, for the size and scale of organisation we are, and also promoting what interleader brokerage is, has been so important for us to actually be more in person and do those presentations, and obviously during the COVID time we'd have done them virtually, but having that high contact for us has been really important, and has also then brought in a good sort of pipeline. And again, we are very open to all backgrounds. Our students don't need to get a particular grade. What we're looking for in terms of attributes is motivation, resilience, communication. They're the sort of the key areas that we look for. And Donna can also say that students who may not necessarily think this is a career path have applied, and they've had some success with us as well.
Great, thanks, Raki. So is it fair to say that it's sort of trial and error how you've ended up with the schools that you're working with, sort of happy accident almost? Because you obviously, with your size, you're not going to go to every school, are you? So is it a mixture of geography and other factors?
I wouldn't say it's happy accident. It's just taken a long time to sort of, we've carefully sort of navigated which schools are going to give us the right sort of pull and diversity not just in its sort of traditional STEM, but just more wider too as well. So hence we have got sort of 3 schools. We've got 6 schools now, and it's taken us time to build out those relationships with those schools. But what has been difficult is actually obtaining access. So once we've built a relationship with one school, it's then sort of helped give confidence to other schools to when we approach them and going, look, this is what we're offering, can we have access? But all the schools we built our relationships, there has been some sort of connection or some sort of network that we know, so we can get access. I think the difficulty with schools is it just is very hard to tap into the career advisors, no matter how many mail shots you do, how many emails, how many telephone calls. Schools are under resourced, so it's challenging to be able to access that. And what's definitely sort of said, in the ideal world, it'd be great if there was a platform that gave you access, but there isn't. And so it's a shame that not all students will get access to this, but we're really proud of the schools we have liaised with, because those schools are often overshadowed and don't necessarily get that access. So those are some of the schools we are partnering with.
Great, thanks, Raki. Perfect sort of lead into the question I'm going to ask Donna now. Just a reminder to everybody that you can pop questions into the Q&A. I've seen there's one through already that we'll come back to a bit later. So any questions for our panelists as we go along, pop them in there and I'll come back to them in the next 10 minutes or so. So Donna, over to you. So we've heard from the employer perspective, particularly an employer who works directly with you. Just give us a bit of a bigger picture first, though. What are the kind of things that you're trying to achieve with all your students? Because Reading Valley's got a sixth form now, so you've actually got quite a broad age range to deal with, haven't you?
Yes, we have. And I think all we are ever hoping to achieve is a successful outcome for every student, and that's got to be individualised to each student. So we do promote all pathways. We do give lots of support to students that are interested in not just the traditional route to university. And that's been the case for many, many years now. I've been doing this role for 14. I spoke to a boy in the summer when my burglar alarm broke, and he'd been in his current job for 8 years that I'd helped him apply for when he was 16. So I've been promoting apprenticeships in the school for a very long time, and alternative routes into other things. And we do it in a variety of different ways. We've got a whole program that starts at the age of year 7 right the way through to year 13, and I have a weekly careers lesson with the students for the whole school. And then, as Tristram said about getting the careers in the curriculum and things like that, we do have that right the way across the school. So I think my focus in the last 8 years since our sixth form opened is employer engagement and working with employers, because my ultimate goal is to support the students that don't want to go to uni so that they're employed as they leave school. And we've had a huge amount of success with people like Raki and BGC and other companies in particular this year. So we're really pleased with our employer engagement and just want to grow it going forward. Yeah.
Right. So what's, just out of interest, what's the broad split between those that go to universities and those that choose a different career?
It varies year on year, and I was discussing that this morning. We had our first employer talk this morning from PwC. Last year we had 19 talks, and from those 19 we had 3 students directly employed from those talks, and a variety of work experience placements and school leaver placements. To give you an example, I think last year we had around 123 students, 73 probably of those went to university. We had definitely 8 students that went off to apprenticeships and degree apprenticeships, and then we had a remainder of a mixture of students who are part-time employed and still seeking apprenticeships, because I think what lots of employers forget is that their application process is actually very difficult. And for students who are studying for their A-levels, it's very time consuming, and often they struggle to allocate enough time to each. So they might miss a deadline on an apprenticeship if they're studying for an exam the following week. So I think year on year it changes, but we do have quite a high proportion of students who do want to go straight out to work. And we encourage all students to have a foot in both camps from the start of year 12 and to research all opportunities and options, so that they are best advised to go the pathway of their own choice and not just what somebody else is guiding them to do. It has to be a lot of self-research and self-reflection.
So in the work that we've done over the years, I've noticed that you've got, city employers, like BGC, sort of whatever their size, whether it's BGC size or direct line, PwC kind of size, but also you've got some very local employers that have worked with you. So what do you think it is that works well when it comes to employer interactions in your school? What works well with the school? What works well with students? What resonates?
I think the main program for the students that I put on for year 10s would be the mock interview program. Lots of employers from the local area and alumni and parents and governors will come in and do a mock interview and give feedback. Students get absolutely beside themselves with the feedback. They love to hear that in year 10 about how well they've done, would they be offered a job. Annually, we do a careers fair, but I've been working for the last 14 years with all of the secondary schools in my area as a consortium. So we put that careers fair on and invite together all of the employers that So we share all employers in the area. If an employer comes to me and has a vacancy, I share that with all the other schools so that everybody has an opportunity to apply, and that employer will then have a successful outcome of getting somebody right for the job. But equally, I don't know, I just network with lots of local employers. One, for instance, has employed 14 of our students over the last 12 years onto their degree apprenticeship program. He has sponsored the careers fair for the last 3 years because we don't get any funding for anything. And that is quite difficult. So he's been a really good local employer. But you tend to find that a lot of the local employers are keen to come in because they want to grow their own workforce. And I think it's really nice to develop that for the students as well as for the employers.
Got it. And do you find there's particular times in the year when actually it's best to work with students? Because I know that's one of the debates I hear quite frequently, which is when should employers go in? Are they going in at the right time? What works for the school doesn't always work for the employer. What do you think works best from the student end of the spectrum?
I think if there can be flexibility, and I think what we did with BGC, they kind of tailored their work experience program to our date. So it's kind of working with employers and students to find out what works best. And I know there's a lot of platforms out there that share weekly things that go into the curriculum. Well, you can't always just drop something in ad hoc. That isn't going to happen when there's a GCSE curriculum. You can't just suddenly sign out of that lesson and sign on to a webinar or something. It's got to be a planned process for a school. And I think if you've got lots of sort of meetings going on between employers and schools, you can then plan it in advance. My weekly talks, I fit into the sixth form every week, the employer talks, and that's delivered before the lessons start. And at our school, we have what we call a period one lesson every day from 8:30 till 9. And that's given me so much more flexibility to get lots of employers in at that time, whether that be virtually or in person. And as Tristram, has told you about all the requirements that schools have to do, and we have to do so many encounters with employers per year. And for some schools, that's quite difficult. But if you're given the opportunity to do it virtually with a Q&A session at the end, so in effect, they are still having that one-on-one experience with an employer, that can also work really well. But I think for both parts, I think there needs to be flexibility to fit in, but in advance. I think it needs to be planned in advance. And that's what we generally do. We plan these things way in advance with dates, and that way then you've got more opportunities for employers to come in.
Got it. The questions are starting to fill up, so although I'm very tempted to ask you even more, Donna, I'll resist that for now, because I'm going to loop back quickly to Tristram, and then I'll go to the questions that we've got him coming through on the platform. So Tristram, this is a question for you. From all that you sort of heard there, what do you think the future is for career guidance over maybe the next couple of years or so? Is it going to go into kind of stasis, I guess, because we have got an election coming up and there'll be noise but little action? Is it going to be, I guess, iterative, sort of a gradual improvement of the same? How do you see things panning out?
Well, I mean, I think the long term, I mean, I remain very optimistic because if you look internationally, you see organizations like the OECD or the World Bank or the European Union, all these different big global organizations that have a lot of sway over how the global economy works, keep bringing out reports and documents saying this is important, government should engage with it more, they should fund with it much more. So, and that has grown over the last few years. And so the recognition that the world is complicated, that young people in particular are going to need help to navigate it and to transition into it, that there's value in stronger relationships between education and employment and so on. I think that's not contentious anymore. We people agree with it. What's always difficult is that when that then comes down to any one national government, is that then they have to find money and they have to reorganize some of the way things work in the education system, which is not always that easy, and so on. I mean, in all honesty, what do we have to say? What are the possibilities? Well, the best chance we've got is that probably sometime after Christmas, the government will publish a new action plan on career guidance, which is in a sense a more substantial response to these two reports that I talked about, the Select Committee and the Ofsted Review. It is possible that there will be some new resourcing in that. It's possible that there'll be some new revision of the statutory guidance and the legal framework within which schools work and so on. But in all honesty, it's not going to be major stuff. But I think there's a possibility that after Christmas we see some improvements. I think we then will have an election, and actually, in some senses, it doesn't matter what government we get. There's a new opportunity at that point to re-engage with them. I think if it's a Labour government, there's, I think, some reason to think they might give this area a bit more attention, which is not to say, there's been, the Conservatives have been through various phases where they've, created a lot of problems for the area and then built it up again. So it's not really a party political issue, but I think there is some reason to be optimistic. So, if we were looking over the next 3 years, I think there's everything to play for and a good reason to think this might get better. I think in the next year, we've probably got the bulk of what the system looks like, and it's probably going to carry on much as it is. So if you're not happy with it, then as an employer, you probably need to sort of think about where you're going to invest and what you're going to do about it. But yeah, from government's point of view, I think it will carry on improving. It just might take a little bit of time.
And what do you think is needed to what can we do to help in that argument? Because as you mentioned, CDGP, that we're involved, a number of other organisations, and it's very much you're involved yourself, Tristram. The employer's voice needs to be stronger. Does the individual school voice need to be stronger? Is it everybody just needs to keep banging the drum? Because I'm thinking about the people we've got on this call who are very active in this space. You may sometimes feel, well, how do we influence what's happening in Whitehall? Anything you think that we at the IEC could do to corral some of those viewpoints to help with this?
Yeah, I think the employer voice is very powerful. It's certainly one of the most respected ones in government, and so I think if employers are saying, look, I think one of the problems is that it sometimes flips between government saying it's all the employer's responsibility and then government complaining employers are not doing enough, when I think really the truth is in between. Employers are actually willing to do quite a lot, but they need government to put the infrastructure in place to make it possible. And I think that message needs to be kind of, kept going, really. And I think where the ISE has got a really unique voice to add to this discussion is in that employer perspective. Which is not to say I don't think like teaching unions, head teachers, academy chains and so on, they should all be speaking up as well. But I think the employer voice of saying, look, actually, this is important for our ability to attract talent, for us to recruit the kind of people that we want. If you want apprenticeships and so on to really flourish, then you need to help us to get into schools more, and that the government needs to do some basic things like put in place a brokerage system which matches up school need with employer capacity, which is something that we've had in the past that we've lost largely, and would help especially SMEs. Not so much the corporates who can kind of manage some of this stuff for themselves, but SMEs really haven't got the headspace. And I also just don't think it's not the ideal system if every school and every business in the country are running around looking for people to work with. We really need something that sits in between.
Got it. Great. Thanks, Tristram. Right, that's fantastic. We've got loads of questions. So thanks everybody so far for sharing all your insights. We've got about 10 minutes left, but I'm just going to pick your brains a little bit more. So I'll go through the questions in order that they've come up with. So this first one I think is from somebody I don't have a name for, but I'm guessing this is to the employers, which is, how do you handle students who are under 18? Is that a barrier for giving work experience? Is it a challenge? Raki or Steph, do you want to take that first?
So for us, we do offer insight days for 16-year-olds and above, and our 10-day work experience is actually for year 12 students, but it's towards the end. It is obviously, if they are, they're 18 and above, it is easier and it's better. And just in terms of just, otherwise they're classified as minors, and we do have to take care of like safeguarding, etc. But what we have done is done the insight days to give a little bit of a taster to them, and then the year 12s we have offered the work experience. So there is a mixture of students of between 17 to 18 years old. It is harder when they are younger, because we've got to take into consideration safeguarding, all sorts of other sort of insurance aspects and everything else too as well. So it is more challenging if they're not close to the age of 18.
Is that the same for you, Steph?
It is the same. It is a lot easier if they're over 18, but that doesn't prevent us from offering work experience to under 18s. It's just that we have policies and processes that we'll need to go through just to for safeguarding and insurance purposes.
Got it. Thanks, Steph. Now, Steph, I'll stick with you for the next one and come back to you, Raki. So this is a question from Jan. So Jan's asking for employers, how do you think schools and colleges could be more helpful? Obviously, Donna's wonderful, she does 4 days a week and does loads of stuff.
Yeah.
Is there any general advice you could give to schools and colleges?
Yes, hi Jan. So I think some of the things that I mentioned earlier around having an efficient way to engage with your students. So through things like virtual engagement, but also finding, identifying the I know that we want to kind of give all advice to all students, but it gets to a point where we want to be speaking to the people that are going to be interested in what we've got to say. So it's getting that balance right with sharing kind of broad, these are all the different opportunities, but then getting a bit more targeted around the audiences that we meet with to ensure it's best use of their time as well as ours, right? And so that we can have more in-depth conversations. I just have these memories of standing in front of classrooms full of students, and they're just like not interested at all what I've got to say. So if you can reach those students, that will be interest, but also we've got to spark interest in other students who might never have thought about the opportunities that you've got to offer, and giving us notice. Donna, you were saying that you had this really clear plan, which is brilliant, but so often we get like last minute requests, can you do this, can you do this, can you do this? And like you guys, we're also under resource constraints, and we need to plan busy diaries. So if we have longer time to plan in these things, it's more likely that we want to do it.
Yes, I share that. There's a school I offered to work with there in Somerset many years ago, and they sent me an email saying, "Can you come in tomorrow?" It's like, no, not quite that short notice. Raki, any overall advice from yourself, from your experience, how you think schools and colleges could be more helpful to employers?
I think it's encouraging the students to just remind them that opportunities are obtainable. And to remove some of that sort of stigma and negativity that can often be associated with certain industries, and really encouraging them that you can go for it. Like, don't be afraid to apply, don't be afraid to make that step forward too as well. And it should be to all students. That includes students who may have SEND needs or may have other sort of challenges, etc. And I think again it's that piece around communication and responding back. So I appreciate, as an employer, we're very proactive. We're in communication with Donna quite frequently. It's just schools coming back to us to say, yes, we're interested, yes, actually, can you allocate this time? We try really hard to accommodate for all of our different initiatives and programs, but we often just don't hear anything back, and that can make it quite challenging. And then suddenly it becomes all a bit of a rush. And as Stephanie said as well, even though we might be in private sector, we do run on very lean teams. So that communication component is really key. And again, just going back to my earlier point, I think it's really important that all students are offered an opportunity. It shouldn't be narrowed by subject. Some of our schools, and we've given this feedback, narrow it down because we're financial services to economic students, business studies students, and we'll always say you don't need to narrow it, broaden it out. We are quite an entrepreneurial, diverse organisation. We're very open to all sorts of backgrounds and study and disciplines and subjects, and it's just really getting the schools to do that and open that up then too as well.
Got it. And a question here I've just seen as well, actually, that you might have a view on, which is, how as you kind of work through your school strategy and develop your partnerships, have you generally found schools are receptive to employers contacting them, or is it can be a bit tricky finding the best contact sometimes?
So Stephanie, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go?
Why don't you go first, Raki? Go on, you go there.
I think once you've established the relationship with the school, then you've got this communication. But do you know what? For many of the schools, though, they don't have an established careers advisor like a Donna, right? Donna and Roding Valley is probably a slightly unique setup, and also Donna's like an octopus. It's got tentacles everywhere. Whereas I think a lot of the schools are challenged with that, because many of the teachers are doing this above and beyond their job, and some of them are doing it at the side of their desk. So it's really, really challenging for them to be able to sort of come back. And I think that's where, that's where funding and other sort of, opportunities around sort of helping the sort of schools, maybe parents or other local, we've even offered to sort of say, look, we'd be happy to help and, give advice and setting up a structure. I think it's that accessibility and just them having support, I think is the biggest barrier, because I think schools want to partner with employers. You just don't have the capacity. And I think that's the challenge. And the curriculum is getting more and more demanding. The expectations of what schools need to deliver is getting more and more demanding. And I think COVID has also made it difficult as well, because a lot of schools are playing catch up with their students.
Thanks, Raki. Anything you'd add to that, Steph?
No, I don't think so. I think Raki covered it well.
Great, thanks very much. So Donna, apparently the answer is we just put one of you in every single school in the country. That sounds sounds like the right answer, which I'd be very flippant about, but actually that is something I've made in the past at some CC events. Just a couple of questions to you, Donna, before we wrap up. So a question from Jane. If you see me looking sideways, I'm not watching a tennis match. I'm flicking between screens, between the Q&A box and the chat function. So Jane asked a question in the chat. Well, I don't know the answer to. So people who've left your school, can they still come back and use you, or do they go into the broader careers system? Do you provide help to those that have left school in terms of seeking apprenticeships?
Yes, I do. I'm in touch with any of the school leavers from this summer or going forward. I still have lots of contact from people that are even at uni. Can I please read over their CV? Can I give them some advice? We always say that once you're a student of Roding Valley, you're part of the Roding Valley family, and I try and remain in touch with that. How I make a lot of my contacts with employers is via my alumni students. So of my 19 talks last academic year, 8 of them were alumni students. So it's a little tip to employers, even if you have someone you are recruiting as an apprentice, you would then ask them to link back to their school, to their careers leader or to their careers teacher, whoever that happens to be. And then you've got that automatic connection. And that's how I've gone into an awful lot of employers. I've reached out to them via LinkedIn. I asked them to connect with me on LinkedIn, all the students that as they leave, they connect with me, or even before that. So yes, that's how I remain in touch. And equally, that's how many students would contact me for some advice or guidance going forward. I'm always open to anyone, any support. But in particular, the ones that have just left, because we have to provide destinations of where our students have gone anyway. That's part of the requirement of the Gatsby 8. So I'm in touch with families that haven't perhaps let us know where they've gone on to. And anyone that says, oh, I haven't quite got anything yet, they're automatically invited to share their CV with me or come in for a meeting.
Great, thanks, Donna. I'm going to keep at the pace of the questions because I'm conscious of time. So Andy's asked a question for you, Donna. So he's talking about sharing alternative pathways other than universities. Do you think there needs to be more support from departments of education? Is there still a sense of expectation that university is the primary route? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it depends on who's running your school, who the head teacher is, in terms of how much time gets given over to alternative routes. But again, that's part of your provider access policy as a school now. So you have to actually invite in people that provide technical education pathway routes, i.e. apprenticeships or T-levels or colleges, an alternative route to just students staying and remaining in your own sixth form. And as a careers professional, if you are qualified to level 6 and I'm a member of the CDI, you have to be impartial and you have a code of ethics. So any students that sit in front of me, I would guide them impartially. And that wouldn't necessarily mean remaining at Roding Valley for the sixth form. It would be based on their interests and what they're telling me they would like to do in the future. So in terms of this school having alternative pathways, yes, we do. We engage from year 7 with the National Apprenticeship Week. So all students by the end of year 7 will know what an apprenticeship is.
Got it. Which ties into a question around in regarding to apprenticeships. Somebody hasn't put the name up. When do you think is the best time for employers to actually come and talk about apprenticeships? Is it after UCAS deadline? Should they be getting in first? Is there a specific time of year?
I think if you're targeting year 12 students, it needs to be at the start of the academic year because it needs to give them time to, in year 12, research that whole process, perhaps create email alerts on the company website or LinkedIn so they know, or even via me. As I said, I do a weekly bulletin and I let students know we engage with the Young Professional Programme. That's on every bulletin that goes out. I encourage them to do a minimum of 3 insights and work experience events. And I suppose for the year 12s and 13s, that's in their face all the time. For the younger year groups, there aren't a huge range of employers that would employ 16-year-olds. You've got some, but not, a huge range. But if students in year 11 come and see me and I run apprenticeship workshops for year 11 students, we would then show them how to apply, what to do. So if you were looking to employ a year 11 student, I think always at the start of academic years is a good point for employers to come in. And even beyond that, at any point. And I just think the thing to do is liaise with the school to actually get those dates in advance that works for both of you. Because if you have 2 year groups, and I know Steph said about she might be talking to students that maybe wouldn't be interested in the insurance, we give students the choice to sign up for the talks. But actually, I do believe that if you do talk to more students that hadn't necessarily signed up, you could convert that student into thinking, didn't know about that. I'm actually really interested. And I've actually seen that happen on one of my business breakfast speed dating events where students rotate around and meet someone that they'd never considered as a future employer. So I think there's fors and againsts on both. But to give students choices to attend talks, I think is really important because you are then tackling the ones that really are interested and keen.
I think that's really important about that choice, isn't it? That they want to be there rather than feeling forced into listening to something that did suit. And you're never going to turn them around. Yeah.
No, but I think what also young people don't understand is the volume of jobs in each company. So each company has a department, and I'm just about to go and launch a new careers program that actually talks all about that, about how you are a certain type of person, but you would fit into any company more or less.
Yeah.
I'm going to squeeze in one very last question because I think it is quite a quick one. Another question for you, Donna, from Sam, just saying, and she's comparing to university perspective, and I know this from my own background, which is it can be a struggle getting people to turn up to events, especially in the evening for students. Is it the same with schools or is it timetabled? So I know when I've done talks at your school, it's been in the timetable, so it's never been a problem with attendance. I've never been speaking to an empty room. Is that the same for all your sessions, Donna?
Mostly, yes. And again, it's all about marketing, isn't it? I have to have my marketing hat on. So if I am running the careers fair, the annual careers fair, I will then supply an assembly talk. And I do a lot of videos because I can't always access all of the students at all of the time. So I do a video that the form tutors can scaffold down to all of their tutor groups. So it's all about promoting it. It's about constantly putting it out there and making sure that everybody knows about it. And the most important people are always the parents. Parents are the key to understanding what apprenticeships are, what the alternatives are. And I've had to do a lot of convincing over the years for some parents because they don't always see that the apprenticeship is a valuable route. But I think because we do that whole program over the course of it's a 7-year program, by the time they get to the end of year 13, most parents and students know who I am and know what I'm about. And yeah.
Donna, that's brilliant. We could have kept going for a lot longer there. I'm sure there's more questions coming through. I've got loads more to ask, but I am conscious of time. I can see people dropping off, so it's either 1:30 meetings or people are just starving. Actually, that might be it as well. Tristram, Raki, Stephanie, Donna, you've been brilliant. Thank you very much. We covered so much ground in the last hour. Sandra's put a pop in the chat if anybody wants to get hold of you. If anybody wants to talk to any of the panelists, please come through me, Stephen with a PH at ise.org.uk. Great session. As I said, you'll get a link through to the recording over the next couple of days, so you can revisit anything that you've missed. Also, if you want to share it with colleagues, please go ahead. And of course, Wally also a little bit earlier in the chat popped all the other events we've got coming up soon. But on that note, I will finish it. So again, thanks to everybody for your participation. Thanks for the great questions. Thanks for paying attention, and hope you all enjoy the rest of the week. Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye.